Are we live? Are we good? This is my first time using this, but it seemed like a fun idea to try something new for my YouTube channel. And so, yeah, how's everyone doing? I hope everyone is having a good day. I hope today has been the best day that you've had in a long time. And I'm actually really excited to do this live stream. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm very excited about it. So yeah, let's get going. Okay. So yeah, this is kind of exciting. It's amazing what you can do with technology. It's amazing what you can do with various technologies, with computers, with FaceTiming, with live streaming. It's pretty remarkable what we are able to do. And yeah, so just got a comment. I appreciate that you're excited too, and that we can share this. I think, wouldn't you say that it's amazing what technology can do? Like, this is something that I wouldn't have even imagined like 10 years ago. And not that I would have known that much about YouTube at the time. I think YouTube's only been around for like 12 years, 13 years. But yeah, it's just amazing how fast technology accelerates. I always have plenty to talk about. And so I wanted this hangout to be a little bit, not too structured, but a lot of the themes that I like engaging with on my YouTube channel, where we could easily talk about books, and we could talk about my books, and we could talk about the world and society and ideas. There's so much that we can explore. So I'm very excited that we're able to do this today. So yeah, so how would you feel if I read a poem that I wrote yesterday? It's kind of dark, I would say, but I think it'll capture the intensity. What's interesting is, like, when I wrote this poem, so with Wordsworth, we get the idea of, with William Wordsworth, the 18th century poet, romantic poet, you get this idea of spontaneous flow of emotion. And so one of the ways in which you can write poetry is by exploring these concepts of, like, it's not always about what you immediately feel. It's not always in the moment when something's happening, but it's more when you recollect later. And so I'll admit, I was having a little bit of a tough week just with some various things in my life, in professional settings and the like. And so it was a little bit difficult of a week. So I wrote this poem yesterday with spontaneous flow of emotion, where I felt as though I was able to capture some of what I'd been feeling. And I enjoy writing my poetry. I find it to be very intense. For people that are new here, I wanted to say that you can find my author page on Amazon at amazon.com/author/Phoenix_rises. And I encourage you to check out my books. I published 20 books. I've published 20 books, and I am glad that I've been able to do that, and plus some Kindle editions of things. And I hope to publish more books in the future, so I am a writer. I very appreciate the people in the chat. Thank you for stopping by, and I really appreciate you being here. So without further ado, let's dive into this poem. And, I think what's really cool about technology and the kind of democratization of things is we are able to definitely engage the world in a lot of different ways than we used to. We really are becoming truly connected. And of course, there are worries about that, as we may know. There are things that make it to where, people don't always get along, and people are exposed to completely different viewpoints about the world. But I think that could be a good step for diversity, for people understanding different points of view. And I don't know if you agree with that, Amanda. Would you say that is true, that there's more of a diversity of ideas that we're more aware of now than we ever used to be? It's just something that I've observed, and I think part of that is from technology. I think the internet has accelerated that process a ton, and globalization and all of these things. Anyway, I don't want to get too pointed, but this poem is called Point, and I wrote it yesterday, as I said, with spontaneous flow of emotions. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Chaos and the infiltration of fear and anxiety, mood dipping, dripping from agony, such a tormenting scream of liquid fate made hate. Acid, rain and burn, just burn. I might imagine anything anyway. It might not make sense, but is it supposed to under such strict control? Our inaccurate filter, crushing mood. Our consciousness bursts in agony like a star. Like you made the point, like crushed mood, a heart explode, death we implode, collapse and relapse don't even know. Anything left to be chaotic form and social sophistry, knowing nothing of being with me. Make it really mean, make it something, anything like we'd ever know what it's supposed to mean. Anything what anything is, or just some future machine, a hardware of a heart, a point. Like no only loss of anything real, just make your point. Strange visceral loss of yes, that yes it was or wasn't, anything real, anything incompatible views, lives unable to ever reconcile, scream, and the noise that you hear so deep within, and I am my own sharp point of intense feeling, depth of feeling, agonized, torment of a tormented route, path and mind, anything I might feel will stab, not so simple. Such things will never immediately make sense then. This is the pain of points. Make up your argument, spent. You are a point. You spill off the page a dagger point, pen point. Pen spilled ink all over you'd ever even think. Write everything ever poetic. Rejected loss from every lack of reality. Point a paint pints of warm blood from your wound and injury. Tell your story, then tell your story, tell your story, and I am a sharp heart. So yeah, that was my poem, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I really appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, I think I try to capture the intensity of emotion, the intensity of feeling with my writing, and I appreciate your comment on that. Yeah. Did you have any thoughts, Amanda? Motions that you can relate to? Yeah, and I'm glad that you like it. So this book, yeah, so that's a good question. So this book is from a book I'm writing called Echo, and the book is literally spilling off the pages because it's already like 150 pages, and I don't know if I'm done, but I like that I'm able to kind of convey a lot of different feelings and ideas in this specific book that I've been writing. It's poetry, and yeah, I mean, some of my books are definitely very long. I don't know if you have known about my book Rogue, which recently came out from Hybrid Sequence Media, which I will admit, it's definitely very exciting being able to publish your work and work on this new frontier of writing and never knowing about the things that we get to publish in our works, which is really great. So yeah. You said that you feel emotions. Yeah. Deeply. Yes. No, I understand that. Yeah. There are a lot of emotions that we might feel in the world, and a lot of things that happen. Like, definitely we're living in a tough time. We're in a tough time with the pandemic, and at least in Utah, we've had some natural disasters. So it's like pretty serious stuff. I mean, it gets pretty serious after a while, and that can be a little bit worrisome with all of the things going on. So yeah, I'll admit I'm worried about the riots too. I've been worried about just some of the choices that people have been making, and I think that it increases instability and it can make things really difficult. So I have, is your name pronounced DWiggles? DWiggles Schizoaffective? Thank you for coming by. Yeah, I appreciate that you watch my videos, and I hope that you enjoy them. I don't know if you enjoyed the poem, if you were here for that. But yeah, I try to keep a variety on my YouTube channel. I try to keep a variety of just a lot of the topics that I talk about. Did you have, DWiggles, a favorite theme or even video that I've made? I do talk about mental illness with some of the videos that I make, and I actually have some ideas for another video that I want to make in the future about schizoaffective, actually, or at least just mental illness at large. And I wanted to be able to do that. So yeah, but I appreciate you stopping by. And yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on the channel? I mean, certainly if you had any thoughts, feel free to share them. Amanda's asking me to read another poem. Should I read a new poem or a poem from Rogue or a poem that I wrote a year or two ago? Do you have any ideas? And you like my philosopher series? Yeah, no, I'm glad. So the philosopher series is something that I haven't been posting as much because it takes a bit to be able to read the material and be able to come up with something that fits the context of the philosophers you're doing. So I don't know if you've seen any recent videos, Amanda, in the philosopher series. The last one I did, I believe, was, if I can remember, it was Porphyry. And I was surprised to see that that video was actually getting a lot of views because it was kind of a difficult video to make because Porphyry, I wouldn't describe Porphyry as being obscure so much as just not as known. I mean, Porphyry isn't even included in the canon in most cases. Usually that goes to people like Plato, Aristotle, the pre-Socratics. But it definitely depends on what's going on. So yeah, I really appreciate Amanda and DWiggles for coming by. This definitely means a lot. I wasn't sure how this was going to go, but I'm glad that people have been here. Amanda, so you haven't seen the Porphyry episode then, I'm assuming? Okay, well, I definitely recommend that one. That was getting a few more views, and it is a little bit more specific in terms of the terminology of logic, but I try to make it a little bit more universal because one of the basic ideas in that video is talking about how we reason about the world. So 3 of the ideas that I discuss in the episode are nominalism, conceptualism, and realism. And so in philosophy, as you'll see in the video, there are a few ways of looking at, I would describe the world. So we have conceptualism, which is where everything is mediated by the mind. And most of what we understand about the world is our concepts. Then we have nominalism, which is the idea that universals don't exist at all. So basically, like, the universal is the way in which we describe things. So the word chair corresponding to chair, the word chair doesn't really denote anything that actually exists in any real sense. And then, of course, there's a realist perspective where you say, well, of course, there's the chair. So that was one of the things that made that video specifically very interesting. But yeah, I would like to hear what DWiggles would like to chat about too. I think that's a great question. I definitely try to be very inclusive in my channel. I know that the world the world can be very chaotic sometimes. And so often we find people who may not always understand what we're saying, and sometimes that can be difficult. But I definitely want to be as inclusive as I can be, and definitely have people interact and engage. And I do really work hard on my YouTube videos, and I hope that people can enjoy them and watch them and see them as being very interesting. And to answer your question, Amanda, I will read a poem from Rogue very soon. But yeah, so I really do try to be very inclusive, and I want people to feel comfortable on my channel. I want them to feel safe. I mean, because the world is not safe, you know, and in my estimation, not everything is safe. You know, talking about ideas, talking about the world, it's not always safe, but I try to at least make it presentable and interesting in a variety of ways. So that's a good question, Amanda. So yeah, so 2 videos, I will go into that in a second because that's actually a great question. Yeah, so that's a good question too. So there's an essay I wrote called Mental Illness as a Social Construction, and I actually ended up reading that essay in a video. And the point of that, it didn't necessarily go into my experiences as much as like kind of the outlook of mental illness. And I haven't read it in a little bit, but one of the ideas was just capturing that a lot of the ways in which we judge people with mental illness tends to be this kind of strange, like it is socially dependent. So yes, there are biological basis to mental illness, but there is also a way in which we socially construct how we look at mental illness. And one of the problems with that is that's how you end up with very cruel treatment and people not being understood for having mental illness. And so I definitely did that because I was hoping that people could relate to that theme, that there is also a social way of looking at mental illness, that it isn't just biological, that there is a way in which people do respond to people with mental health, maybe mental health challenges or just various things. And so I don't know, like I feel like I should talk even more openly on this channel. Some of it is just trying to figure out, you know, like how to talk about it in a way that people find accessible. But I do try to talk about it in a way that's interesting and that people can relate to. So yeah, so DWiggles, I would encourage you to check out that video. You can find it in the playlist tab. And that one specifically would be in the video where I read in I think it's called New Readings. So it was basically new readings that I've done recently from like my books, from essays, from a variety of things. So I encourage you to check that out. Yeah, DWiggles, that's a great comment. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, feel no pressure, you know, to chat. I just appreciate you stopping by, and I think it's great. And I was going to say, yeah, I think a lot of it, yeah, that's good. That's good that you've been open. I appreciate that. I think that, yeah, I try to be open too. I think sometimes I may approach it from a more abstract perspective, but I think there's a lot of value in conveying it from a personal experience. I think there's another essay I read. Actually, no, that one was a discussion, but it was based off an essay I wrote where I actually do talk about my experience with mental illness. And that one you can find in the mental illness tab on the playlist tab. So if you wanted to check that one out too. But I think it's great that I think people are feeling more comfortable to be open with mental illness and to talk about it. And I think that's a really great thing. So yeah, I appreciate your comments. I'm glad you like the guitar videos. Yeah, I really enjoy playing guitar. Do you play any music, DWiggles? I'd be curious. Nice. Do you play guitar then? You play specifically guitar? That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely want to check out your channel too, by the way, DWiggles, because I think that's really cool that you've been making videos and talking about your experiences. So yeah, I appreciate you being here. Yeah, there are a few things I want to say, but I don't want to take it on a tangent, or not even tangent, but just other things that might detract from the conversation now. But I do want to address the most popular videos because I think that is actually a really interesting question. And there's interesting things to talk about with that. And I do want to read a poem from Rogue, so we'll see what we can get to. So you have an acoustic guitar. That's remarkable. I don't play acoustic, but I have a lot of respect for it. It definitely fits really well in traditions like folk music. And I'll admit, I haven't heard of a Jackson. Is that an electric guitar? Or what kind of guitar is that one? I hadn't heard of that one. Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome that, yeah. I get really excited about the electric guitar specifically as an instrument because I like the intensity of the sound with like the distortion and a lot of the things. Yeah. So DWiggles, do you play more for like heaviness, or is it more about like emotional expression, or like how do you, I mean, phrase might be a word, but how do you think about music when you're playing guitar? Because I'm always open to learning as much as I can about guitar because I really like it, and I think it's a medium that's very dynamic, and I like that. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm glad that you like the chat, Amanda. I really appreciate you stopping by. It really means a lot. Yeah, heavy metal is great. Yeah, no, and that is true. There is a way in which I would say that guitar is really dynamic. Yeah, heavy metal I think is a good genre for allowing the emotional intensity to be able to be a part of that. And yeah, I'm really happy to hear that you found something that helps you convey emotion and that helps you convey how you feel. I play music for similar reasons. I write for similar reasons. I think there is an art to being able to convey your emotions through some kind of medium, whether it's an instrument or through a poem, through a variety of things. So yeah, I think that's really cool. So I did have a question for both of you on. So is there any kind of recommendation that you'd like to see on my channel? We've talked about guitar as well as talking personally about mental illness. I'm always just trying to get ideas. I have a lot of ideas, probably too many right now, but I'm always looking for suggestions and ideas. Yeah, so that's a good question too. In my spare time, I do a lot of my art. So that includes guitar, making YouTube videos. Like I really am proud of my channel. I think it's become a lot more diverse throughout the years, and it's wonderful to be able to have equipment to be able to do that. I think that it's really cool. And yeah, I think that, yeah, so just finding ways of, again, what we were talking about earlier of expressing ourselves, expressing myself. So I do that through music. I do that through music and through a variety of mediums, especially writing. So I really enjoy that process. I did, before I forget, I wanted to mention the most popular videos. So there are a few videos that I think have gotten more views, but there are two videos specifically that I think have gotten the most views. And so one of them, speaking of personal experience with mental illness, I have a video called Confessions of a Schizoaffective. And that one is very interesting because I just used my iPad camera. It was pretty cool. And I just talked about my experience with working with doctors and social workers and just a variety of things. And again, to talk about the social ramifications of having mental illness and the social structures we build around it. It certainly seemed to me that there is a way in which we look at mental illness. And I wanted to talk about that because I think that a lot of ways in which we think about these things, if like we don't have mental illness, can be harsh and judgmental. And I don't like that. And so in that video, I wanted to talk about that. And it's gotten a lot of views. In fact, every time that I check my feed to see what people have been watching, people are always consistently watching that video. And that honestly makes me really happy that people relate to it and that they find it interesting. The other one is one that I actually don't like as much anymore, which is the Dangerous Ideas of Mitchell Heisman. I don't think it's necessarily a very good video, not even in terms of like the quality of the recording or whatever, but even in terms of like the content. I think a lot of people like it probably because it is a little bit polarizing, but it's actually something that I'm less interested in now. And the reason is because I think it deals with taboo subjects that can be really hard to talk about. It's not that it's bad to talk about them, of course not. Like we should talk about these things. I think I could have done it in a way though that was maybe a little bit more relatable. And I don't feel like I did that. Actually, when I did that one, I had trouble making it because I felt that it was a complicated topic, but I did it because at that time I was struggling a little bit with some mental health stuff. And so it helped me kind of at least think about things. But yeah, I mean, I hate labels too. I think that it's unfortunate that we're often judged for having a mental illness. I feel like people can't really talk about it, like we can't really talk about these kinds of things. Yeah, no, DWiggles, I need to check out your videos more. I'm actually really excited to see some of what you've been doing. I think a video on counselors would be really interesting. In your experience, DWiggles, if you wanted to share, do you feel like you have a more positive relationship with like mental health providers, or do you feel like it's kind of skewed, or is it even sometimes very negative? I'm just curious because I'm trying to get a gauge of what the experience is like for people. Yeah, and it is easy for people to judge. They don't always understand what you're going through. In fact, I think a lot of the times they don't even care to. So yeah, and that makes it hard. I do have relatability, or at least empathy, in the, that people don't understand mental illness sometimes, but I do wish that we would make more of a stride to try to understand it more. And I think part of that is empathy, just realizing that people have a different perspective, people have different brain chemistry, and that there's nothing wrong with that, especially if we're doing what we need to, such as taking meds and taking care of our health and, going to therapy, just those various things. So yeah, I'm actually really inspired by this idea of being very open with, just as open as you can be with talking about these things, because I think people can relate to it. And I think that that's what I've tried to do with a lot of my writing, is be able to convey some of these things. So yeah, I appreciate both of you for being here and for stopping by. It really means a lot to me. Yeah. And I noticed too, DWiggles, I was going to mention that you paint and draw. Yeah, I cannot translate my thought. I can do it through words, but I can't usually do it through like an actual picture. In fact, I noticed that a lot of the times in my thinking, it tends to be very abstract. And so because of that, I'm often thinking of words or even just abstract notions. And so it's actually less imagistic in a sense, which is interesting because I think a lot of my really good poetry has very strong imagery. But even then, like, I couldn't imagine actually drawing that or putting it to like paper using a pen or colored pencils or, even paint. I have always struggled with that. So yeah, and meds are a hard thing. Meds, because you wonder, like, why do you need to take them? But for whatever reason, for whatever the science of it is, they help. They definitely help. So yeah, I would love to read a poem. DWiggles, I hope I didn't lose you. I hope you're still there. Yeah, so I was trying to think of what I wanted to read. So this is from my book, Rogue. Yeah, DWiggles, I agree with your comment. I definitely do. I think often the problem with labels is that, yes, they can help you understand it, but they limit people's empathy and way of thinking about something outside of a specific concept. A kind of, like, I would describe dehumanization. So let's see. So yeah, just trying to decide what poem to read. There are a lot. So I'm going to share this one because I really like it. And I did post a video on YouTube with me reading this one. But I think reading it in context will actually make a lot of sense, because a lot of this does deal with mental health. And I think some of the aspects with mental health, one of the problems is that it can be difficult to build your self-esteem, because you often feel torn down, like your mind is working against you sometimes, and like people are not always empathetic, and that can make it really hard. So this was one, it's not something that I would say is easy to talk about, but I think through sharing poetry, you can convey some of these things in a more, I think, in an artistic way. And I think people can relate to that. So this one, again, difficulties with self-esteem sometimes. This one is called I Am Worthless. So I'd say it's worth less, just the loss, just worth something, with my hands broken and blood from hitting the wall hard hit. Life is young by calculated death. You told me I was worth less with your esteem, telling me slice my feelings are wrong and you don't care about my song. And worth and less and rip smack close shut, for such violent hearts run amok. You know nothing of hope or decency. Why are you messing up my life and telling me what I should think worth last, and messed up and smashed? My hands red blood from punched and slashed. You are so cruel for worthy and slam the stone you threw at me in stain. You don't know stigmatized stigmata, bloody fists for fights, and I got screwed by cheap shots. It's the blood dripped, pull from red drop. You're just scars ripped, shed open your blood, and your heart is a blade. Cut, you made me cold bled. I hate yet worth no compassion for crushed and smashed. I am lost, I have lost, less lost. The worth last, made blood lust. Your false sustenance and slammed. I guess I sharp for familiar feeling, and the feeling stabbing me brutal. You made suicide, and I cut bled, and I feel a part dead instead. Blood from slice your violent thoughts scarred, for making me worthless, for making me worthless. Just your strategy for success. My heart doesn't matter unless it's suicide, silence, slice, blood drip, pain, and suicide, dead and knifed. Worth is anger turned inward. Yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words. And I don't know if that poem was your cup of tea. It was definitely intense. I wanted to make sure that it was at least accessible in the approach and the presentation. So, but it is intense. It does deal with that poem specifically. I think deals with that feeling of loss. You know, wondering if like you know, are just I guess the issues with like feeling down on yourself sometimes, and sometimes feeling like, you know, that you're alone. But what I've realized through time is that you're not alone. There are people who care. And yeah, I'm glad that the poem is relatable. That really means a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I'm enjoying this. I think this is great. I really appreciate people coming by. And yeah. And that's the thing that people don't understand about depression, is like that it can definitely, so the way that I would describe it is that people have the depression, but a lot of people think that you can just like change the mentality. But because it's biologically rooted in some ways, there's a way in which it seems like you can't just like outthink your depression. You can't just be like, I'm going to change my whole mindset and that's just going to change everything. It does help. Certainly one of the things I've learned, such as with CBT and DBT therapy, there is this notion that, you know, you can change your thought process through time, but that takes a lot of work. And so when someone's going through depression, the worst thing you can say is just be like, well, just don't feel that then, because it doesn't capture the whole experience. And I think that that's one of the problems. So yeah, depression is a prison. I think depression, it makes you feel discouraged, I think, and with dealing with that. So we have a new person. Wes, thank you for coming by. I'm glad that you're here. It's definitely been a fun time. Yeah, and the negative voice is definitely it's a very real thing. And I really empathize with people who feel that, you know, who may feel depressed or may feel down or have a lower self-esteem. You know, it's just kind of, it's the way that it is. And it can be hard to live with sometimes. So yeah. Should I read another poem, or do you have any ideas of what you want to talk about? Anyone who's here? I really appreciate you all stopping by. It definitely means a lot. And I'm actually very excited that I can do this live stream. I've never done one before. So this is all new. I'm trying to utilize technology in interesting ways. And I think the live stream idea is pretty great, that people can use live stream on their channel and be able to reach more people and have conversations. I think that it's very important. Yeah. Yeah, this is fun for me too. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, you're all wonderful. I really appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, DWiggles, I like your comment. I think that it's very poetic. And I think that, yeah, I mean, the tragic thing about mental health stuff is sometimes, because it is such a personal battle, and because often people don't really understand what it's like usually unless they've gone through it themselves, it becomes this thing where our mind does work against us. And I've tried to work on that specific aspect to make it to where like I can not let it bring me down, but it does sometimes. And sometimes it does feel like my own mind is working against me. And that can be a very difficult thing. So I was going to ask, oh, Black Mirror. So not Black Mirror, the show, but definitely I did write a book called Death Mirror. That one was really cool to be able to write. And I know that, Amanda, you like that one. You have the review on Amazon, which really means a lot to me. Unfortunately, that book is no longer in print, but hopefully I can bring it back to life sometime. That would be really nice. So, yeah. Yeah, you do have that book. So I think that's great. But yeah, I can read another poem as well. Should I read from Rogue, my new book? Should I read from Echo, or should I read like maybe a happy poem? I'm just wondering like what would be interesting given what we've been doing. Yeah, thank you for coming, DWiggles. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of the day. And thank you for stopping by. And yeah, I hope that you have a good day. Yeah, and I hope that I gave you some ideas for some of the videos to watch. If you wanted to check those out. Again, the one on mental illness as a social construction, and then also, mental illness as a social construction, and then living with mental illness, a discussion. And you can find those on my channel. Yeah, thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate it. So let's see. So yeah, I can find a happy poem. I have written happy poems, or at least semi-happy poems. So I do try to do that. To try to have a balance. I mean, it's good to have the intensity and some of the darkness, because that is a part of life. But I would say, that I do try to have a balance. I try to write poems that are also inspiring, and not even just happy, but maybe dealing with things that are joyful in life. I try to have a balance between stuff like that. So I am just posting this link on Facebook if anyone wanted to come join. So just one moment, but I will get to this very soon. I'm trying to think of one of the poems I want to read that is happy. So yeah. But yeah, I'm really glad that you're able to come by. It's great. So let's see. So I have been experimenting with different forms of poetry. So often what they tell you in like writing classes and stuff is like use free verse to be able to understand formal poetry. And by formal poetry, I'm talking about poems that have like a more specific rhythm or meter to them. Or maybe something, maybe even like a specific rhyme scheme. So like the sonnet is a good example. And they often tell you to write a lot of free verse to be able to get, to be able to then start writing maybe more sonnets or poems in iambic pentameter. And so I've been thinking about some of these things because I have written a lot of free verse, and I've been thinking about some of the poetry that I definitely want to convey in my writing. And and so I like using different structures, different rhythms and meters, because I think that it helps capture different elements of writing. I like capturing different elements. And so, yeah, and it's true. Like, I think a lot of older poetry, like even some somewhat recent poetry, like Robert Frost is a good example of that, because I feel like he captures these kinds of elements of, certain rhyme schemes, of using blank verse, using iambic pentameter, and using some of these things. But I think now a lot of days people write mostly free verse, and I think sometimes it's actually very experimental even, and so sometimes it can be less accessible because it's not as accessible to people. But yes, let me share this poem. I'm excited to share it. It's called "The Writing of Heroes," and I think that you'll like. I think that you'll like it. I think that you'll like the structure, especially with talking about like different veins and different impulses and different ways of writing, which is like really cool. So let's get to that. So yeah, "The Writing of Heroes." That's what the poem's called. So Yeah, let's see. There's actually a couple I think I could read. This one's called The Writing of Heroes. The words that we speak are cracked and astray, the things we believe imperfect and gray. Our lives are adrift, chaotic and cruel, a ship tossed away, made broken on shore. I see the true joy of journeys enjoyed. Our world is the passion of wild boys. Sometimes adventure, such chaos wild, were wolves made dogs, too calm and too mild. So risk all the death or pain and the loss. No one has said there was never a cost. Life is a journey, we journal and write. So tell your own story, be your own light. For all the pain from poems in a bottle, we drew out our map with a passionate scrawl. The writing of heroes makes everything real. Heroes are joyful, courageous, and true. So yeah, that one was much happier, I would say. Yeah, so no, that's a good question in terms of thinking about what inspired it. So there are a lot of things. So I feel like, I'm kind of like twofold on this process. And some of this I think comes from my education. I think some of this comes from my education. There's these two things in tension, I think. So in writing nowadays, you get people who might be described artistically as more conventional, but their value in adding to the world of writing, to the world of literature, to the world of art is they capture something that's very well structured. So a good example of this, whether modern or even not modern, is someone like William Shakespeare, who, Shakespeare used blank verse in his writing when he was writing his plays and people were speaking in blank verse. And blank verse was also used with Milton in Paradise Lost. And Shakespeare was writing sonnets as an example. And so with these things, you definitely get this structure. And I think that structure is very valuable. And yes, Shakespeare is awesome for that reason. Shakespeare is doing very sophisticated things. And even at the time, I would say it wasn't necessarily traditional, just that nowadays we see it as a little bit more traditional. But the benefit of this kind of writing is there's a structure, there is a kind of almost timelessness about it. And I think that such things are very valuable. But then in more modern times, you get notions of experimental writers who are trying new things, who are trying to break the form, so to speak, to be able to show what writing and words can do. And there's value in this too, because you're able to push the boundaries, you're able to push conventions. And so anyway, to make a long story short, to answer your question, I would say that a lot of it for me is I'm always between those two poles. I want my writing to be very structured, but I also want to do new things and try new things. And so when I wrote this last poem that I just shared, the reason why I did that, why I wrote the poem with the rhyme specifically and by using iambic pentameter, was because I wanted to capture that kind of structure. I wanted to capture the structure of tradition, of using a specific form. And so because I use that form when writing that poem, it changes my writing because I have to think about it in a different way than maybe I'm used to. And I don't know if I told you this, Amanda, but I've actually been writing in Spanish. I stopped doing that for a while because it was really hard, but I was writing some poems in Spanish. And part of that is to learn the language. Part of it is to learn those kinds of structures. And so I think that's cool. I don't have an Instagram. Actually, part of the reason is because I'm afraid of having too many accounts. But I should look into it because a lot of people recommend Instagram, and I think I didn't know there was live streaming with Instagram, but that sounds really cool. And I think that you could be able to do a lot of things with that. So Amanda, you asked very good questions. I'm glad that you liked the poem. I definitely spent a lot of time with that. And I'm glad that I did, because I think there was a lot there. So I'm glad you enjoyed the poem. Shakespeare is awesome. I have written a couple plays. I think I've written 6 plays, but it's hard writing plays for me. Like, I feel like even though it's hard to write a novel because it takes longer and like I have to think about the scenes and connect all of the dots, plays, even though they're like a lot shorter, so a novel might be 100,000 words, a play might be at most like 15,000 to 20,000 words. But the reason why a play is hard for me is because learning the structure of playwriting can be very difficult. And the reason is because I think that it captures, it captures a certain element of being performed, and you have to try to imagine that while you're writing it. But because the page and the so in writing and the actual stage are different, the page different from the stage, you could say, there is this difficulty that I think happens where it's hard to imagine how to translate it, and so translate it to the stage. And so that's one of the reasons why I find it harder to write a play. Because with like a novel, you can just focus on the words themselves and then the plot as an example. But with the play, you're also trying to imagine it on stage. And I think that can be difficult sometimes. So yeah. So my plays, I don't talk about my plays very often. I think the last time I talked about my play on YouTube was when I did a reading, and that was at least 5 years ago, I guess, when I wrote my first play. But they often deal with, I think I would describe daily dramas, and that's what drama's for, to capture the element of tragedy. But I capture a lot of the things that, I imagine people are experiencing, because conflict is a very real reality in the world and between people. And I like writing about that conflict. I think that was inspired by someone like Shakespeare, as an example. There's also another playwright who I've read called Arthur Miller. And even Tennessee Williams, I think, goes into this to a degree, where you get this idea that you are trying to depict the daily dramas of human life. And it's interesting because even with people like Shakespeare, you definitely get this elevation of that kind of thing. And it can really be remarkable. So yeah, so I like that. I wanted to say we've been going on for a while, and I'm very glad that we've been able to do this and we can go as long as we need. I didn't know if anyone had to get somewhere, but I appreciate you stopping by. And I've got plenty more to share, by the way, but I just want to be respectful of your time as well. So yeah, but yeah, no. So for me, yeah, I mean, that's one of the great lessons from the masters. Some people I think are very like skeptical about this notion of like greatness in writing. And I get that. You know, we don't want to close things out because we have a specific idea of what we think writing should be. But I do feel like works like Shakespeare, you know, not to overrate it, but like Shakespeare really does have a very elegant, wonderful way of writing. And I think that we miss out on that sometimes because, you know, we're taught Shakespeare in school, and at the time we don't really understand what it's all about. And so that can be a difficult thing that can be a difficult thing. So yeah. So yeah. So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, the emotion, the feeling, capturing life. I do try. I mean, not all the time, because some of my works are very speculative. But yeah, I would say that. And so by speculative, I mean that they're often fantasy or science fiction or something. And so there is that kind of thing. But yeah, thank you, Amanda, for coming by. I'm hoping that there will be other live streams. Thank you, Wes, for coming by. Thank you, DWiggles. And I think other people have been watching too, and I appreciate them. Thank you for watching. So yeah, thank you for coming by. I really appreciate it. I'm just checking social media real quick, seeing if people were engaging. It's pretty cool to be able to use technology for these reasons. Yeah. So yeah, if anyone has any other questions, let me know. And if not, then we can go ahead and wrap it up. I feel like this was a very successful stream. I appreciate all of the wonderful questions that people asked, and I appreciate them coming by. And I hope to do more. Some of it is just figuring out how to do this. It's definitely a different thing for me. So definitely figuring out how to do it. And I think that it's a lot of fun. So I very much appreciate people coming by. So yeah, thank you for coming by. If you have any thoughts too, let me know in the comments or in the live stream. and let me know what you think. I very much appreciate everyone for coming by. Yeah, so if there's any other comments, and if not, then we can go ahead and close off. Thank you for coming by. All right. Well, I think that was a very successful stream. I got to share my poetry. I got to share my writing. I got to talk about some of my ideas. We talked about mental illness. People asked wonderful questions, and we had a great discussion. I think this is wonderful. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and end it, but I really appreciate people coming by, and I hope that you enjoyed. I'm Phoenix, and thank you for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos. I've definitely got plenty of other videos. I looked recently, and I have about 477 videos, I believe. And there's definitely a lot there. So definitely check it out. I really enjoy having a YouTube channel. I enjoy growing it and building upon it. And I really enjoy these things. So yeah, and also be sure to check out my books, which you can find on my author page at amazon.com/author/Phoenix_rises. Be sure to check out my other videos where I play music and I talk about philosophy and I do a variety of different things. So yeah, thank you for stopping by. Be sure to give this video and other videos of mine a like, and as that helps me a lot, be sure to subscribe as well for more updates on the content and to keep you updated. And definitely, subscribe, like, and share. It definitely helps me a lot. I also wanted to say, for people still out there, I hope to be doing more with my channel. And one of the ways that you can help me is for all of these things that I've said, like subscribe and share. I also encourage you to check out my books. Again, that's on my author page at amazon.com/author/Phoenix_rises. Definitely checking out my books helps me a lot. It helps me keep my content going, and it helps keep me inspired. And it helps a lot. If you ever read one of my books or left a review, that would definitely help a lot. I would very much appreciate that. So yeah, thank you for stopping by, and I appreciate you coming by, and you've definitely helped make the world better through engaging with things, and I appreciate that. So yeah, thank you for stopping by. I'm Phoenix, and I hope to have more content to come. I will have more content to come, so keep a lookout. I'm Phoenix. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.